Welcome to Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing. What if you could learn from experienced real estate investors, find out what got them to where they are now, get insight into their daily habits, and take these insights to inspire your own growth? Each week, Jonathan Green shares an in-depth look at the mindful approach to real estate investing. Jonathan is a lifelong real estate investor, advisor, and coach, as well as the founder and team leader of Streamlined Properties. Whether you're looking to start from scratch, get to the next level, or just for a straightforward and honest approach to real estate investing, Jonathan seeks to provide a free mentorship program you can take with you anywhere. Now, here's Jonathan.
Thanks for showing up for another episode of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing. My guest today is Tommy Visaggio of Viza Property Management. They are a New Jersey property management firm, but they're also getting into HOA management, which I found really interesting. And you're going to find Tommy's story interesting because he bet on himself and figured out a way to start without getting paid in the business to learn what he needed to do, and that led to much, much more and this company. Let's get to the show. This is episode 254 of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing with my guest, Tommy Visaggio. Tommy is the founder and managing member of Viza Property Management. I know these numbers, that's going to be more, but as a principal, he's orchestrated more than 23 property transactions, securing 76 or more residential units across New Jersey, but he's seen over 1,000 multifamily units from concept to reality in his prior career. Tommy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jonathan. Excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're young. How did you get into real estate? You've been doing this for a while, but you are not an old person like me.
Yeah, I was going to Montclair State University. I had a finance major, and a major real estate development company in New Jersey was looking for an intern in their finance department. So I had no interest in real estate at the time. I just liked numbers. I liked investing. So yeah. I jumped into that. It was an unpaid internship, probably 40 minutes from my house. So, parents weren't too thrilled about it. They didn't think it was a great idea, not even getting reimbursed for my mileage. I had a Ram 1500 at the time too. So it was quite expensive. But, I was immediately exposed to all different parts of the business from a larger scale, right? This company does 200 unit redevelopment projects in transit-oriented neighborhoods, mostly throughout central to northern New Jersey. Yeah. So I had a great opportunity to get exposed to the commercial side of it very early on. And one of my bosses there did a lot of investing on a smaller scale on the side. And that was how I jumped into it. I actually did my first deal with him in 2018. And it was pretty much off to the races from there. So that's how I initially got involved.
Yeah, but that's a really interesting story because there's a lot of guests who've been on the show and people that I've met, mentors, who say you should always take something for free and prove yourself. Why were you able to do that when a lot of people these days, they're just looking for, hey, give me the highest paid thing, start out. They're not thinking about the experience and where it could lead, even if it wasn't right away that you thought, hey, real estate's going to be a thing for me. Yeah,
well, I just knew my family had no connections in finance or real estate already. I want to say any true white collar jobs, what I was trying to get into. And I knew that I had to work for free to get my foot in the door because, I didn't have any relationships to rely on. So that was why I felt it made sense. And for my situation, it made a lot of sense. I was commuting to Montclair, living in Little Ferry, New Jersey at the time. So it was only about a 15-minute commute. It was very easy to get to and from. And, I didn't have to pay for a room and board. In-state tuition, Montclair, pretty affordable. Yeah. And I had saved a lot of money. I was working at a hardware store for a few years before that, so I was able, and I was living at home, right? So I didn't have to support myself in a way, in my youth. And so I said, this is not that I want to do it, but I know the companies, as long as you do a good job, they're going to want to keep you and they're not going to expect you to work for free for very long.
Yeah. And then I suppose you just proved yourself and also took on a learning hat while you were there. And I think that's really important as well, because you can kind of clock in and clock out, or you can learn all you can while you're there. And if you're doing a free internship, you better learn something because you're not getting paid.
Yeah, totally. And I was really happy to have fallen where I did in the company. I actually didn't start property management. I never even got involved with when I was, at the company. It was purely finance, and it was really interesting. I learned how to do the loan checklist, closing items, on big buildings. What are the bankers looking for? They're really the ones who are doing the underwriting. You have to gear your underwriting based on what a bank is going to give you because, right, you're not doing a project without first lien position financing on, $30 million construction loans, how to do the underwriting for the refi, how the, interest rates, all the basic stuff initially getting into it. And, it was good. But after I did my first deal, it was a fix and flip on a short sale in Bayonne. I said, this is where the money's at. I like having full control.
Yeah.
I like how fast things move and how easy it is to, identify deals as a hustler. And I just knew that's where I wanted to be.
Yeah, and I think with your background in finance, once you took that and put it into real estate and saw what it was on a larger scale, when you're looking at these smaller things and you understand construction and numbers, you're 100 times ahead of everybody else, who's out there with a random real estate agent who's never flipped a property and they've never flipped a property. Did that kind of help you move quicker because you really knew the numbers? And that can help you obviously with renovations, ARV, everything that's coming up.
Yeah, I want to say I was really good from a number standpoint, from an administrative standpoint, knowing how to manage the loans and things of that nature. But from a construction side, absolutely nothing. I had nothing, and I learned that pretty quickly, doing my first deal. I mean, the first deal I did, I didn't get any permits for it. And I would have had I known that was the right thing to do. I just did a $60,000 job, and I got red tagged on, right when we were coming to
first one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
And that red tag, had I known like how, what that could have turned into, I would have been a lot. But, I was ignorance is bliss, right? At that point, I had no idea. And my contractor just happened to have some relationships in town, and they were going to be able to get that squash for like $500. When in reality, they could have sent me back 6 months if they wanted to get plans. I didn't have anything.
Yeah. I had a red card in Montclair. I think I got fined $6,000 and I went to hearing. It was a disaster. It's just one of those, you can't win. So like from an ego point of view, you want to fight, but it's like, I technically I was wrong. So it's like, what am I fighting about? Even though we know now, as you go along, there's a lot of kind of wink, you can do this and building relationships inside towns because that's what you did a lot. Those relationships with the towns are really important as you start to grow and scale, right? Especially in New Jersey.
Right. But I would say the biggest thing I took away from it was that, buying at the right price is the most protection you can offer yourself, buying at the right price so that you can afford to make those mistakes. Right. Because I was like, wow, I still made that amount of money and, I basically fumbled my way to the goal line. Imagine I actually knew what I was doing. Right. So I figured as long as I buy right, I'll be protected. And the more experience I get, the less mistakes I'm going to make in the future.
Yeah. So how do you keep doing that, though, up until now in New Jersey, where we've had extremely tight inventory, high prices, and a lot of kind of newbie investors and first-time home buyers buying properties that a lot of us would normally look to buy and get better deals on?
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to lie. From North Jersey, I all but gave up. I really love South Jersey. I love the Camden County area, Burlington County area.
A lot of opportunity.
So much opportunity and far less competition I feel, right? Obviously the property taxes are much lower, but I've also experienced much higher collection rates than I have in North Jersey, at least, based on certain neighborhoods up north. But other than that, it is the rents are much more affordable as a percentage of what people are actually making in income, right?
Yeah.
It's very difficult for me to get in some places in North Jersey to get that 3X multiple in North Jersey. And also,
you get like a half X.
Exactly. Right. That's what you have to, you come to accept over time. But the biggest thing, I love that there's very little rent control in most South Jersey municipalities. Because in my mind, that's the biggest cap to appreciation, right? You're not going anywhere. Like ultimately, number one, the tenants know they have a good thing. They're never going to leave, right? They have no reason to leave. And it's going to be generational. Their kids, they're going to be there forever. While it's very possible that all through that time, your operating expenses are outpacing the maximum amount that you increase rent at. Eventually, you're going to be at break-even cash flow. What do you do?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But of course, we'll talk about your whole experience of getting into property management. But you were talking about these lower rents. What I've found over time is a lot of people who get scared of these kind of lower rent areas, but they don't understand that when you're a good manager and you provide a good project, a good product for people to live in, those people are appreciative. Especially if you're taking the time to choose the right renters, it's not really the rent that changes it. A lot of it's on the landlord a lot of the time, just providing a good product and being able to kind of communicate with the tenants and know like, hey, we're in a partnership. Have you found that over time?
Absolutely. And especially on the 1 to 4 family stuff. As of recently, we've been doing more so around 10 unit buildings or so. But with all of our 1 to 4 family inventory, that's where there's a lot of, quote unquote, non-professional investors, maybe people who inherited property or people who live in one of the units and rent out the other. They're not, it's not a priority. They're not running it like a business, right?
Yeah.
I want to show these people, what separates me from the competition and that I value them, right? Because I'm competing for them amongst a good pool of inventory down there. So from the very start, we look to do, the 3D walkthroughs, even on an apartment that's going to rent for $1,400 a month, Yeah. I feel that in addition to making us, putting us up in the search engine optimization on Zillow and stuff like that, it just shows that, okay, this guy goes about his business in this way. Just in marketing the property, I would think maybe he's going to do a better job in taking care of me once I'm in that property than someone who does little to no turnover, presents it very poorly, and like that.
Yeah, I mean you're the bridge between the owner and the tenant, and if the owner is not going to be good at it, like I'm not a good landlord, I know that I need a buffer because I just don't enjoy it. But for you to get in the middle, you have to be good. But I'm sure you found, especially in New Jersey, that it's really tough. It's tough to find good property management. But part of it is what you said before. There is a lot of rent control, especially in northern New Jersey. So the cash flow sometimes isn't necessarily dependent on bad property management. It's bad buy price versus low rent, restricted rent, and then high increasing costs. Yeah,
totally. I think that's why a lot of our clients come in, non-rent controlled municipalities because, in those places, those landlords have to squeeze every bit they can just to make a reasonable profit or break even, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of times they're not able to afford a property manager, even though they might want one. And it does shock me that some of the prices that those properties sell for, especially in cases where the rent hasn't been registered for many, many years. And these landlords, unsuspecting, don't even know that they're liable for their rents to be, go back to what they were when they were last registered, which could be a fraction of what the rent was when they bought it,
Yeah, that's something a lot of people don't know. And I'm sure people can get themselves in a pickle, especially in Hudson County. There's a lot of rent control. Have you found that the price point also makes it your X multiple is great in South Jersey, but the price point to get in allows you to accumulate more units and get better options and really provide affordable housing in an area where there is a lot of more affordable housing than there is in North Jersey, even Central Jersey.
Totally. And I do like some of the long-term potential of South Jersey because a lot of people maybe who have more disposable income, all right, maybe when they're getting close to retiring or they think things are too expensive. A lot of people go down the shore by Tom's River. There's not a ton of employment down there, or they go down to Florida if they have a lot of disposable income. But people who want to stay in New Jersey but pay far less, a lot of them are going either out west, which is there's a few towns out there, but it's more rural and there's not a lot happening. But I think that being next to Philadelphia, major metropolitan area, you have Trenton, you have the Glassboro-Camden line, which is supposed to come in the very near future. I'm hoping it does. Be amazing. All those people living in Gloucester City and those surrounding municipalities would have access to a lot more places without needing a vehicle. You have, there's a lot of medical expansion down there. I think Cooper's Hospital is one of them, right? So I just like where it's situated, and it makes a lot of sense to me. And also, this was the other thing I was going to mention. Down there, there's the municipalities, like the council, the building department, some of them seem to be very pro-business because there's not as many people knocking on their door, right? I've seen that in a few towns down there where we've done projects, and not just buy multifamily, but also retrofits of old housing stock into new buildings. We were one of the first people in those towns to do it, these small towns, and they really appreciated that. And, from then on out, it was like they were kind of welcoming us with open arms and, helping us get through a lot of the things where other landlords might be getting tied up.
Yeah, I mean, that relationship with the town, if you prove yourself first, can really benefit you long term because they'll help you really go along. They'll just tell you what to do instead of, like you said, on your first one in Bayonne, nobody told you in Bayonne, contractor didn't tell you, and now all of a sudden you're in a problem. And there's only so many times you can be like, oh, sorry, I didn't know. They don't really they don't really care sometimes. They definitely didn't
Yeah.
with me. Let's go back to your properties. You started in Bayonne, you did that. You ended up making money out of that. You knew that real estate investing was going to be a thing from you. What did you start investing in after that, and how did you start going up unit wise?
After that, I really liked the north side of Newark. So I ended up buying like 3 2-families there. And I liked the downtown Newark. I liked some of the major corporations that were moving their headquarters down there. I liked all the employment available, the port, the airport, all the major highways that run through Newark. So I really liked it there. Started doing my first couple of deals, but then ran into my first big opportunity. It was an off-market 12-unit building in the city of Passaic. And we ended up getting a really good number on that one, about $100,000 a unit we paid for it. There was no rent control in Passaic at the time. There is now. But we were able to complete our business plan there. Major capital improvements, right? And the roof, the driveway, the backyard, the parking area, the inside, common areas, the whole 9 yards. And what I found that once I waited to let people know what their rent increases were going to be until after those major renovations were done. And in many of these cases, I was increasing rent 50 to 75% because they're so ridiculously low. But I learned that people were willing to pay for it, right? They were willing to pay for a greater standard of living.
Yeah.
And so, we executed on that deal, and then we had the net refinance proceeds from that. And then I'm in a position where, okay, I get a substantial portion of net refi proceeds from this building, and I've been in business a little while now, only managing my own properties, where I've been able to get a few business lines of credit from a few, traditional banks. So now I have some capital to play with, in addition to some friends and family that I've been able to convince to invest money, generally as debt, like on a promissory note, on a continuing basis, anywhere from $25,000 to $50,000 per piece. And that's when I was like, okay, now I could actually, continue, keep buying. That's where I really got the base from to continue on in South Jersey.
Yeah, I think you made a really great point about the 12 unit in Passaic, and it's something that people kind of miss sometimes. Those renters know they have a great deal. They also know the property's crap. So when you come in and improve it, they actually appreciate it. Sometimes, as I was saying before, the upkeep of the building causes them to be more lax as well. And then when somebody comes in, no, we're going to pave this, make sure your cars are safe, upgrade these parts of the building, make everything feel better. I agree with you. I think a lot of those people are willing to pay. And the ones who aren't, they're welcome to leave. You've upgraded it substantially. It's not like you're, going for something crazy. You're just providing a better standard of living, and that can help all the buildings around it.
Right. And to my point regarding the rent control, it now has rent control, right? So a lot of landlords, I feel, they say, all right, my rents are very below market, but I can increase them at any time. There's no rent control in place here right now. But when it goes into effect, oftentimes it goes into effect like retroactively, right? So everybody thinks, oh, I always have time. Like, no, you have to do it while you have the opportunity, go straight to market. And a lot of times people like to do it, I'll do it over time, a little bit, and that very well could have been our business plan at Passaic, but, with the recent rent control ordinance that went into place, that would have, messed up the entire business plan. So I just want to say a lot of people are, leaving a lot of money on the table by accident by doing that.
Yeah. How did you get comfortable starting to ask for family and friends money? Because, you were getting the ball rolling. Obviously, they can see that you're doing well. They already trust you, but it's still hard always to ask for money. What did you use as a proof of concept to tell them that their money would be safe for new investors who do get good opportunities like you did on that 12 unit?
Yeah. Well, man, looking back, how little I knew at that time, I definitely wouldn't have lent me money if I knew. But it's just people who were more so investing in me rather than the property. They weren't real estate people. I could tell them about the mechanics of the deal and tell them why there was so much money on the table, where even if I wasn't able to refi and get, pay them out through the net refi proceeds, worst case scenario, I'd be able to sell the property and make them whole 100%. So they didn't fully understand that, but they more so felt comfortable giving the money to me because I guess they just knew me, right? And I guess it was money. Like I was at 25 to 50,000 is a lot of money. Right. No doubt about it. But, these are, older people for the most part who were looking to differentiate their investment holdings. Right. And it's worked out.
Yeah. So you finished at 12 and then you started to head into different areas. What's your now you're involved? You have some commercial mixed use. Do you have a particular property type that now as a buyer or investor you're interested in the New Jersey area that you think is a little bit better cash flow wise maybe than others?
Yes, I really love mixed use.
Me too. It's my
Yeah,
favorite. It's the best.
because you kind of get the best of both worlds. Number one, it's a little more difficult to obtain financing, right? So you're taking on a lot of people who don't have those kind of relationships or aren't comfortable taking on that risk, while you still have a good amount of very stable cash flow from the multifamily, very dependent upon the percentage of multifamily to total cash flow of the building, right? How much is commercial? How much is multifamily? So I feel like just going into it, you have far better yields. The most important thing that I look at when deciding whether or not to do commercial, I like small commercial spaces, maybe not more than, 1,000 square feet, close to like not more than like 1,500 a month in rent, because there's a lot of people that fit those boxes.
Yeah.
And I like spaces that are in, downtown areas where there's a lot of traffic, because a lot of people don't need that commercial space. I feel that a lot of them use it honestly strictly for advertising their business.
Yeah.
Right? They may use it, but in today's world, I mean, there's so many things that you could run right out of your house, right? So number one, foot traffic, but also number two, to be, in places like Mount Holly, right? That's where I have one on the main street.
Yeah.
It's a county seat. So by default, there's a very high demand for small space for accountants, attorneys, small professionals, things of that nature. So I just look to be very strategic, because I've had situations in the past, like a very well extended periods of vacancy in commercial, because I had no idea what I was doing going into it.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I feel the same about mixed use. I love Main Street mixed use. I think it's the way to bring everything back after COVID. I still think it's struggling. But your point is great, because I think when you have those small spaces as part of a mixed use, 1,000 square feet or less, it's like those are less likely to be vacant for so long, because you can offer it at a good price. And a lot of people can just try out a business. The person who's been wanting to have a pottery shop for years, I mean, for $1,200 a month, you can try it for a year, see if it works out. Maybe you do well, maybe you don't. And I think that's it's definitely missing I live in Mendham, and it's missing from our main street. There's a lot of restrictions there, and the town just isn't as good as it should be. But I go to other towns, and you want them to feel like a real main street. And that's where I think when I'm looking, I look a lot in the Catskills, and I always looking for these main street. And it's funny, people are buying all these Airbnbs very close by, short-term rentals. And I'm looking at these mainstream ones like, wow, I got something here. I could put a short-term rental on top and a commercial that I can actually help, the foot traffic come back again. Yeah, I think it's a really interesting thing. And another great point, that you do take a lot of the buyers out who are just looking for strictly house hacks. And a lot of them don't know the hack that you can, as long as it's 50% or more residential, you can get a residential loan on it. But again, it depends on the configuration. So are you still looking for those? I'm always looking. It's just like, you got to find them in the right spot. I've had like 4 failed deals just in my town because the sellers are crazy.
Yeah. No, definitely. That's probably the main thing we're looking for. I do love multifamily. I'm doing a deal in South Jersey, a 10-unit right now. The thing is, I only take those when they fall into my lap, because there's so much competition, and people are able to pay cap rates that I just can't or won't, So that's why I feel like, exactly. Main Street. The other thing is, I think a lot of it is lifestyle driven, like Amazon, e-commerce, things like that. Yes, people can buy almost anything they possibly need without leaving their computer. That's understood. But people love to go out shopping, be in the hustle and bustle of a downtown, get out of their house, be around other people, have coffee in the shop, have restaurant. Like, I love to do that too. I don't see that going anywhere for the foreseeable future. And that's why I feel that although it's commercial, it's safe doing things like this, because they're always going to be able to, and, as long as you buy at the right price point, even if something happens, you have a couple of years where you have very, very high vacancy, as long as you have a good enough portion of residential.
Yeah, exactly.
You're in at a good price point, you're going to be okay.
Yeah, and I think if you say you have 2 residential and 1 commercial, and your commercial goes vacant, you can always do stuff in the town. You can rent it back to the town, so they can do like a Christmas pop-up. There's so many options where you cannot go dark, just by being a part of the community. Again, I think it's really important. And I think it's good for younger investors to look for that too, because if you're, even if you have, whatever, a power washing business or something, and then you buy it, you live upstairs. I mean, you can house hack a mixed use. I mean, I think that's what's one of the most interesting thing. And as you were saying before, it's a diversified asset in one asset, commercial and residential. I mean, where can you have more fun than that? I think it's just fun.
And Jonathan, you got to remember, done a lot of research into this yet, but I haven't pulled the trigger on anything or even gotten close to it, because the only business I've really done so far in my life is real estate and property management. But with those small, 5 to 1,500 square foot commercial spaces, there's a lot of businesses you could run out of there yourself without you doing it, like as a franchise.
Yeah, I agree.
Smooth, like very low investment too. Smoothie King, H&R Block, all these very low risk things. And guess what? Like, you don't even have to worry about making a considerable profit, because all you have to do is pay yourself market rent and maximize your refi proceeds while learning a new business while you're doing it, Yeah. It's incredible. I haven't been able to do it yet, but I'm definitely evaluating. Like, I read through the entrepreneur magazines and see all those franchises, and it looks incredibly easy. I'm sure it's not that easy, but there's a lot of options.
It's somewhere in the middle. I mean, my plan for these buildings that all failed were all the same. I was going to put, my real estate team or brokerage in the bottom, maybe open an independent bookstore with my son or do something with my daughter. Like, this is what the opportunities are out there. That's why I'm always scouting for the same reason, because especially now, like you said, with all the franchising, you can get something that's a little bit more of a turnkey business, or you can do, what Cody Sanchez says, just buy other businesses in town, upgrade them a little, especially somebody like you with very good systems and understanding how things work. You just take someone's business who's old and their kids don't want the business, and now you kind of customize it and modernize it, and now you got something going.
Yes. There's a lot of people doing that in today's world, right? Buying a lot of those old plumbing and business things of that nature.
AI can't get to them, though. It's smart. It really is. In real estate, though, like we always talk about for agents, but for property management too, it's like that can't go away. There's all these apps and stuff that want to make it seem like, a robot can just control the property management. That's not person to person relationships. A robot's not coming to fix the toilet or responding in enough time. AI can respond, but they can't fix anything. Have you found that it's important, as we get into the property management section of how you got into that keeping that human relationship is really important, even as you grow with technology?
Absolutely. With anybody. I mean, especially with the municipality, a lot of times maybe, we perform really well in certain towns and have relationships. People may hire us strictly for that, right? Or a landlord, if I had them, I use Easy Repair, which is a software that connects with Property Meld, and they take my 24/7 call center. At first, I had the highest subscription where I would, paid a premium in exchange for them providing additional service by calling the owners directly, trying to get price approvals on work that had to be done so that it could be scheduled and they would take it to completion.
Yeah.
I was successful in having it done through Easy Repair a total 0 times, because my landlords, they don't want to talk to them.
Yeah. They don't even know who they are.
Exactly. I mean, to be fair, it is a US-based call center. They do a really good job. But the landlord, they want to hear from me or somebody on my team,
Well, because they really want to know, like, is this really necessary? And if they're not talking to you, they don't know that it's really been vetted. It's just like a tenant complaint half the time that comes through the cycle, right? And that can get into, that's just a pain. Yeah, I agree. I understand that.
Yeah. And you got to remember, like, there are fewer things in this life that are more of a responsibility than handling somebody's property.
Yeah.
So that's incredibly important. And I think what is great about being a small company where, I can't afford to do wrong by somebody, right? Every review, every person that comes into contact with me, I have to give them my very best so that they will tell their friends and family or give me more of, the properties that they have to manage. And whereas big companies, like, they have a little bit more resources, maybe they could do it a little bit cheaper, but the person who's, managing a client, they could be gone the next week, the next year, and then you have to worry about building a relationship with that new person who's taking your space, and you don't know what they're going to be like. So, with us, I mean, there's no turnover since I started. It's me, my sister, Tyler and Chandler, who are brothers, who I also grew up with.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So everybody on a team is pretty much people that I've grown up with and are very happy to be where we are. Work very well together.
Hey, it's Jonathan. I hope you're enjoying this episode with Tommy Visaggio. And if you are immediately thinking, hey, I need property management help in the state of New Jersey, and you want to reach out to Tommy and his team, go to vizapropertymanagement.com, and that's Viza is Viza. When you go there, it's very easy to get in touch with them. They are my preferred provider for New Jersey property management. Let's get back to Tommy. Yeah. So what led you to start property management? Because it's a very hard business. I think if you're good at it, you can be great. But I just think there's a lot of dead carcasses in the road of property management who just, they're just not running a business, as we were saying before. What led you to start the business, and then how did you grow it?
Yeah. So we had probably 40 or 50 units under management internally, or properties that we owned at the time. So I wasn't anything close to a property management company at that time, but I was managing them as part of being an owner. A lot of landlords like to call themselves property management companies, so I had to put additional systems into place. And the first thing was, Buildium, right? I had to get a property management software. I had to stop collecting rents in cash, which was ridiculous. Never should have done that in the first place. But, after I felt for about a year managing my own properties, and my partner was a contractor who had a lot of skilled and unskilled labor available. Yeah. So I felt like we had the resources to handle a lot more than we were actually managing, right? We could only buy so many properties or raise so much money, or the banks would only lend us so much money, whereas we could manage a lot more. So I said, why don't I do this for third parties? So I had tried doing that. It was very tough. I didn't realize how difficult it would be getting my name out there. Yeah. I thought I had a decent enough network, but it probably took about a whole year before I got my first true third-party property management. And then from there, because it was all word of mouth, I was just talking to people, trying to stir up some business. But then in the first year, I probably got like 4 clients. It was all very small, like condos, single families, things of that nature. We were able to handle a lot more, right? We already had the 12 unit under management, understood like small scale management. But I was very happy with how slowly it happened, because it taught me how to work with clients, work with landlords. And for the first time, I'm dealing with somebody else's money than my own, right? Because it's easy when it's your own. You don't have to check with anybody. You don't have to, get the price approved. Or there are certain things maybe that are discretionary, right? That a tenant wants done. I'm going to do it because I like that tenant. They've been there forever. But when you're dealing with somebody else's property, you really have to learn how it is. I try to mend my services to what it is that they want, what they would do if they were me,
Yeah, I think that's important too. Yeah, if you take on too many, especially in property management, you're gonna fail. If you go out too bold. So going in slow and doing it word of mouth probably helped, because you could kind of take what you want. And now as you grow, you realize like, hey, everybody's not going to be a great fit, right? Every landlord who comes to you just might not have the right personality. They may be a little more slumlord, and then you don't really want to get caught in the middle of that, right? Is there some discernment now that you guys have been doing it for a while where you say like, the upkeep looks terrible. This is not going to be a great, we're going to be getting too many calls on this property for what we're charging.
Yes. Well, we'll take any property, but we won't take any landlord is what I would say.
Yeah, fair. Because you can help the property by putting in good systems if the landlord's a nice person, just doesn't know what the hell they're doing.
Right. But when I start hearing, from the very beginning, how they don't want to clean a property that a tenant is going to be moving into, that's a major red flag. If you're not going to clean your property before a tenent moves in,
just leave the carpets that have been there for 13 years, no problem.
Yeah, so I said, what are we going to charge the tenant back when the stove breaks? Anything, right? So I try to think like that when talking to these people and try to feel them out, because as much as they're interviewing me, I'm interviewing them, right? If they don't give me, I'm ultimately responsible. I carry a lot of liability in being the property manager as per the contract that we have in place. So if they're going to do something that's going to put me in a bad position, are they going to care when something goes wrong? Emergency was intended to the right way, and now I'm being sued for it, right? So I try to think worst case scenario, but also I like how slow we've grown, because it's given me the opportunity to go through several cycles, from the onboarding of a client to, dealing with a lot of different issues, working through them with the clients, to even offboarding. A lot of clients might have sold properties where I wouldn't have been able to learn as much or slow down and think about things and how things should be done if I were to do what someone, like, how every now and then you see a software company come out and they just put an unbelievable amount of money into Instagram and Google ads, and they're getting a great amount of leads, and they're probably signing up a lot of people, but who knows what the churn rate on that is, and they don't have an opportunity to work out all the kinks.
They immediately can't keep up. Honestly, I'll just tell you a quick story because it's relevant to what you just said. I saw this thing that I wanted to get for my niece. It was like a stuffed animal of a croissant. It's like, it's right up her alley. Instagram ad, great ad. So I immediately order it. It gets canceled the first day. So I emailed them and I was like, they said, oh, sorry, it's sold out. I'm like, but you're still running the ad. Like, are you stupid? Why are you still running the ad? It's like, well, we want the business. No, you already can't keep up with the business. So you make a great point. There is advertising, but when you do it and you do that part well, or you have someone do it for you, you could get overloaded, and now your reputation is going to go to crap quickly, especially in property management.
Yeah. I mean, because at the end of the day, this is a service-based business, and people are going to judge you based on their first interaction. That's why, talking to the guys on my team, I say, the second somebody calls in, we got to jump on that, because they're going to say, wow, if it's been more than 24 hours and someone hasn't called me about my interest in hiring them for property management, then what are they going to be like when they're managing my property?
I agree. Yeah. These are great points. And also, I think that if you do something where you drive too much traffic, then maybe you encourage yourself to hire more quickly. And then you're hiring people that aren't really a culture fit for what you're doing. Like right now, you have it very streamlined in terms of like, everybody there. But say, you all of a sudden take on 100 units and you can't keep up. You hire someone outside and maybe that doesn't work. And then now your business doesn't run as smooth.
Exactly. And there are some people, definitely some property management companies out there who maybe strictly do property management, but we have the luxury of deriving a lot of our income from the properties that we own. So we're not 100% reliant on that income. That's probably a bigger thing, because if that weren't the case, we would have had to expand it much faster or have kept a much smaller team, right? So that's one of the other parts. And one thing we did just recently expand into is HOA management.
Interesting.
I was surprised at how different it really was, but so far we've been doing it for about 7 months, and we really like that side of the business. And that's another thing. HOA, I feel that very volume based, because you're making much less money in HOA than rental, no broker fees, things like that. So there's a lot of unhappy HOAs out there.
All of them. But all of them suck, by the way, because I know from selling so many, condos inside HOAs, then you're just like, why is it so hard to get the information in the condo questionnaire and to find out about litigation? That's a very untapped market. I'm really excited to hear you say that, because the biggest problem in condo transactions always relates to the HOA. Either they fell behind, unwarrantable condos, or part because of construction and what happened in Miami. That's fine. But a lot of it's because of bad HOA management, high assessments, and then the products are unsellable and everybody's stuck. That's really interesting. I don't even know anyone who has been into that, but I think that's really smart. How did you fall into that? Did someone recommend it, or did something just kind of come to you like, hey, would you be interested?
We just got a lead, and it was somebody, because, property management, they couldn't tell, whether we were more so based on a rental or the HOA, which doesn't speak very well to our website. We should have made that one, but we took it. But one thing I want to say is that for landlords, property management can be seen as a luxury. You don't need one, right? Anybody could self-manage. And if you don't have too many properties, you could probably pull it off. Even if it's not great, you could pull it off. But on the HOAs, you need a property manager, so that there's so many more opportunities, maybe in a place like where I'm based out of Hoboken, right, than other places, that's for sure. But there's just so many of these smaller complexes that don't get the attention they deserve, because these guys who have, a good foothold on the market are worried about maintaining their larger relationships in 100, 200 unit buildings.
Yeah, and I think that people forget that HOA is a completely different operation. You could buy an 8-unit, condoize them all, sell all 8 condos, but you still have the HOA. Someone still needs to run the HOA for all the owners, and that's what happens in a lot of the buildings. They're kind of checked out because they're like, oh, well, we used to have these as rentals. Now we sold them all. Look at all this money we have. Oh, wait, now people still want common areas fixed? Oh, shit, what am I going to do now? And that's really, the common areas are so important in those condo projects, because those are really the things that can become eyesores for all residents, where they're like, oh, it's just a curb appeal thing. Like for a condo, it's a, amenity appeal for when you walk in. Do I feel good when I enter the common area of my main unit? I mean, it's important.
Yep. Totally. And, your property manager really means a lot. Like, say if you're deciding to sell the building, what they see in the common area, if there's anything like ridiculous deferred maintenance that's just taking way too long, that'll have a big impact on the marketability of your property. But one thing that I thought was really interesting about HOAs is on the landlord side. If you're trying to get rentals, it's very competitive, and say anything, I want to say like 20 units or more, it probably takes a very sophisticated investor to have acquired that asset. And it's very likely that they either have their own operations built out, or they have relationships that are 10, 20 years old and managing that property.
Yeah.
HOAs, just 5 board members, and it's changing all the time. Anybody could walk right into a major opportunity. If you have good systems in place, it's much less politicking required in the HOA than it would be for a landlord, I would say.
Yeah, and New Jersey HOAs run different. I lived in Florida 14 years. Those HOAs are traditionally known as being, like old people's havens for just having some power. It's it happens. It happened all the time. My dad lived in PGA National for years, and they would literally ride by on their carts and be like, garage is open, I'm going to find you. Can't have your garage open for more than like 5 seconds. But in New Jersey, it is a little bit more cooperative. But I think like modern HOA management, huge sinkhole that you can walk into and really help, because I think that everyone's disappointed with their HOA from all the transactions that I've done. There's very few good ones where I feel like, wow, we're walking into the sale and they actually want to help us, because it's good if you turn it over and it sells for high. It helps everybody there.
Yeah, totally. And I could see, though, how these companies, because it's such a volume-based business, because there's so little revenue, that's why I feel like I only want to take a few of these buildings, especially that are right in my backyard. It just makes things a lot easier to manage and stay involved with, because, like I said, I don't need to rely on them. And it's another thing that I could grow really slowly into over time as I get more comfortable with the processes and putting more people in place. So I'm really happy that I fell into it and I got the initial opportunity. And we just got a 35-unit building in Hoboken under management. We're going to be starting in June.
Nice.
So, we're really excited to get accustomed to their operations and, get that one rolling.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think these are kind of untapped areas, but I think your story is great, because somebody who has been an investor for a little while, they've built up about 10 units, they may start thinking about the same things. Might you give yourself an opportunity to create an entire another income stream? And that's exactly what you did. You went from, hey, self-management, like this is out of necessity. Let's do a good job. But wait, I think one of the best points of everything you said was right in before, when you said, well, I have a limited capital to acquire more buildings, but there's no limit on the amount of property management that I can do afterwards. And that shows that there's bigger scale for that, smaller level, but bigger scale.
And the other thing too was like risk management, right? Every time I'm buying property, it's almost 90% of the time I'm using hard money loan to acquire it, right? So I'm paying 12% and I have 12-month maturity loan. So even though these are great properties or great deals, it still goes, if rates go up 2 or 3%, which has happened in the past in a 12-month period, I could be in a very bad position. I could have multiple loans maturing that are not going to refi at the same amount, have to come to the table with a lot of capital. So I figured even though I could really turn the throttle on and buy multiple properties at the same time, I only feel comfortable having so much short-term debt in place at a time, So that was a big part of it too, just risk management. Property management is fixed income. Generally, a lot of times you don't even have to wait to get paid, because I have different situations with different clients, but oftentimes it goes right into my escrow account. I take off whatever the expenses are and it goes to the client.
Yeah. Have you guys experimented in management for short-term or mid-term, or are you strictly on long-term rentals right now and HOA?
Right now, strictly on long-term. I do realize that right in my backyard is one of the best possible places to do the short term.
It's just a different beast, though. I mean, again, it's smart business practices by you not going into it till you're ready. But do you see that as a potential on the horizon expansion, because it's just so opportunity driven in all these areas?
I totally do. But one of the things that have, kind of drive me away from it is that, a town could pass a resolution and then it's illegal practice right off the bat.
And then you could lose a bunch at once. Yeah.
I could lose a bunch at once. Something could happen and I could get named in whatever because it was an illegal use of the property. I can't tell you how many times people come to me with these attic units, these basement units.
Very New Jersey popular.
Exactly. I'm sorry, but I personally don't really want to touch them, So I don't drop Airbnb into that. I'm just saying that I would hate to see that happen, right? Because so many towns are just not okay with it. And over the long term, I feel like they're just going to keep tightening it up.
Let's talk New Jersey specific on that 2+1. I always call it a 2+1. It's generally that. Sometimes it's a 3+1, but it's 2 regular units and then there's a bonus in the attic or the basement. Generally, a lot of people use that to house hack because owners can technically live in the bonus unit, sometimes without a stove. Sometimes they're not supposed to have the full sink. But from your point of view, that's not a unit that you want to manage because it's technically an illegal unit.
Yes. Yeah, unfortunately. And Oftentimes, I think if you're living in it, that's one thing, right? Because you're living it at a necessity. But if you're doing it as a business plan, like so many times, I've bought in properties that were being illegally used and converted them into a duplex.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and
That's the best use. And I think what we've seen a lot on transactions that they said it was a 3-family. No, it's a 2-family. And like if you do that in Montclair, you're never going to get it a 3-family. Even if it's complete conforming use and you have a green card, you're still not getting it because you did it without permission. But that's it. You have to make it a duplex. But if you do it nicely, there's not going to be a huge loss on that because the basement units don't rent for a lot anyway. So if you make it into a really nice duplex, I don't think you're at a big loss. A little bit less money than having a separate unit. But I think generally to be safe, that's just a safety mechanism that people need to look at as well, especially when they're buying though.
Yeah, I mean, in Weequahic section of Newark, there was an illegal attic unit, and we converted it into an apartment, basically a massive 5-bedroom, 2-bath apartment. Yeah. And we rented that for $24.50, I think it rented for. Whereas, if you broke it up, maybe you get like $1,600 and $1,200. Like, so you'd get a little bit more, but also there's less wear and tear in the apartment.
Exactly. More people, more wear and tear,
Utilities.
More people arguing too. It's noisy. No, these people don't argue because they're all living in the same place. I think that's just smart monitoring, and especially in New Jersey, that's something that you really have to watch. It's not just what it says on the MLS because realtors don't check the town card and realize that it's a 2-family. So you can check the town card really quick, call the town just to make sure, hey, is this a legal 3-family? Because I had a client who was buying a 3-family. It turned out it was a 2, and numbers didn't work. Somebody else came and bought it. I don't know why. They were kicking out that the top unit was the best unit too. So it was really interesting to see what people are doing. But yeah, I think that your business practices show that you're a business person, and I think that's really important. You're not trying to go too fast. You're building a solid business so that it can grow. What's next on the horizon for you guys? Obviously, this HOA thing is really interesting. I think that's going to be an extra add-on.
Yes, we definitely want to continue getting HOAs in Hoboken and Jersey City. And we already do a lot of landlord management in central to northern New Jersey area. I want to say for the most part, it's Middlesex County and up. But the next thing we really want to focus on is growing the third-party property management in Gloucester City, Camden area. Yeah. Because at first, very similar, we were just buying properties down there, but we now have enough of a foothold and have enough relationships down there where we feel comfortable now expanding into managing for third parties down there. So we did have one commercial property down there that haven't been able to rent in 18 months. So I said, that looks like a good spot for a Viza property management brokerage. Yeah. So I'm thinking about putting our main location in there. We'll have another Google address to drive.
Yeah, exactly.
Leads into, and that will help foster just the sign on the door, right? The street itself has a good drive-by traffic right across the street from the CVS. So I think that'll drive a lot of traffic, give us a good home base. We have a few development projects happening down there anyway, so it's convenient when we go down. But I really want to drive more business down there and continue buying. Last year, we were very active. We bought 10 properties last year.
Wow.
Anywhere from 1 to as high as 9 units. But I think going forward, really want to slow down to like 1 per quarter. That's bigger. So
yeah, right. Like a 15 unit. Good.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I think that makes a lot of sense.
We're looking at one at Oakland right now. That's a really good one. That's 10 units, and another one. And this is a deal that just I got very lucky to come across. We're looking at buying a mixed use in Boonton, New Jersey. Again, it's
my favorite. It's like my favorite downtown in all of New Jersey. It's the best.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I love it.
You could count, on 2 hands, like the really nice downtowns where you enjoy going to. Especially for there's a lot of high income municipalities surrounding it. And that's a little bit of a hub, right? So I feel very comfortable in the commercial market down there. And especially because this property has so many small, on average, they're like 500-600 units,
Yeah.
And they all have great visibility. So that's why I really like it. Because you got to remember, even there's not even any build out, right? Even because a lot of times that's what people look for, right? If anything, I'll give them 1 or 2 months free rent, but there's no build out. Yeah. So that's in a nutshell. HOA, North Jersey, landlord management, South Jersey, and buy about 1 5 to 15 unit property every quarter.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, I really appreciate it. If people want to get in touch with you guys and they want help with property management or they want to talk to you, should they go to Viza, that's Viza, propertymanagement.com?
Yes, you'll be able to schedule a call with us right from that website.
Yeah, and you guys are active on social as well. Awesome, man. I really appreciate it. You are got to make it to the next meetup. I met your leasing director, Tyler, at one of the meetups, but really excited to get you on the show, get some New Jersey property management, because I have in the past always just kind of been sour on property management in New Jersey. But I think that the way that you describe it is really the way that I learned how to do property management from my dad, which is this is a people business. We're here to help people. And if you're in the property management, you're the conduit between an owner who wants them to get a good experience and a tenant who wants to get a good experience. But you have to be the one who kind of makes it all work. So it's been a great show. I really appreciate talking to you.
Thank you so much. The only thing I would say, what I always tell my team, if you treat tomorrow as if that's the day that you're going to sell the property or you're going to refinance the property, if you treat every day like that, for the portfolio, you're just inevitably going to deliver a great service for yourself, for the tenants, for the clients, right? So I try to repeat that mantra for myself and for anybody who's looking to manage on their own.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate it. Great to have you.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Yeah. All right. That was Tommy Visaggio. He's the founder and managing member of Viza Property Management. Remember, that's Viza, propertymanagement.com. I'm Jonathan Green. We'll see you next episode. Thanks for sticking around to the end so you can get a preview of who's coming up on episode 255 of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing. And it's Peter Neal, the co-founder of GSP REI. I know you know what REI stands for. That's real estate investment or investing or investor. What they do is rebuilding essential homes and communities. They're a vertically integrated owner-operator specializing in the redevelopment and development of much-needed workforce housing. Can't wait for you to hear next episode. We'll see you there.